Secretary Pryor, Pat Ford. Some real specifics on this process for the distribution of funds. First of all, is this a grant or a loan?
It is a grant.
And
we know that small businesses are, in some instances, burdened with loan debt. So we wanted to ensure that a very substantial portion of our program was grant funding, and that's what the governor is debuting today.
Will this represent taxable income?
We don't know the answer to that from the federal government. It's a very good question. There's ambiguity from the IRS in general pertaining to investments and incentives offered to businesses, so we will likely need to seek an opinion letter from the IRS.
Thank you. Let's get into the sort of the nitty-gritties so people can start to prepare. Credit checks, cross-reference with the federal dollars. Will you be in touch with the DOR, Rhode Island's DOR, in terms of cross-referencing this? And critically, how heavily will your algorithm depend on, for lack of a better term, the potential morbidity of the business?
Let me see if I can recall those and hit them. Please feel free to follow up. We will establish a viability test for businesses. For example, we recognize that PPP put businesses through the paces. So making it through that process is a check in favor of a business on a viability test. Side note, there was a comment on the governor's reference to PPP and the fact that over $2 billion in PPP and idle financing was offered to Rhode Island businesses. Keep in mind, that was through effort from the Raimondo administration under this governor. There was an enormous outreach effort, especially to minority and unbanked businesses, to ensure that they got into the program, including the establishment of the Goldman program, but not limited to it. Just want to give the governor credit on that. So PPP would be a viability test feature. You've passed that test, secured it, you're working towards forgiveness. Yes, we will consult tax lien information and other information pertaining to a business's performance in that respect as a viability measure. So there's a series of checks that will occur. You also asked
credit check, personal credit check.
About personal credit check. Likely no. That would be time consuming and probably wouldn't teach us all that much. So we're trying to find the balance among criteria that are quickly available, so they won't delay the process, but also provide insight for a business. There are instances in which the viability tests may not be supermajority in favor of a small business. Again, we want to move rapidly, but we want to ensure that we are being fair to all those businesses out there that have paid their bills, paid their taxes, are remaining viable, and merit the government's investment. So there are instances in which we may require a new normal plan, meaning how is the business adapting to ensure that it is capable of performing, of existing and in fact thriving. There'll be a template-based mini plan that some businesses have to fill out if they are not doing as well on their viability tests. And in those instances, as explained in the context of a previous question, there will be some review required. But we're trying to make sure as much of it is mechanized as possible.
I guess just as a final summary, on one level, doing your best to disseminate this money as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. On the second level, do you fear that this burden of paperwork, which is responsible, will ultimately prevent a lot of the, I'll call it the micro businesses from actually applying?
We believe we're striking the right balance. I've explained to you those tests and sources of information that we're including and excluding. Sometimes we're excluding because it would just be too time consuming and it would be inaccessible to the smallest of businesses. So we are striking the right balance, we believe. We're working very hard to assess from the experience of other states. And quite frankly, the governor has established an advisory council for the purpose of business restoration. We've consulted chambers of commerce in Rhode Island, the industry associations of Rhode Island. Big thank you to them. And again, to the lieutenant governor and his team. So we've done all of that. The other thing that I want to point out is there will be a heavy degree of electronic filing that will enable things to move faster. And very, very importantly, we're not going to leave it to chance as to whether we reach businesses in the small business community of Rhode Island. We're going to do outreach. So the governor explained how there's funds for technical assistance and outreach in the additional $26 million. on top of the $50 million for the direct grants. We will be working with organizations like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Rhode Island Black Business Association, the United Way, others in a coalition that will enable us to reach previously unconnected businesses, often unbanked businesses, the businesses that would be harder to get involved in such a program. We're going to work very hard at this, but it will take work, and in some instances it will take a bit of time.
Mr. Pryor,
will this be public
when you mention
afterwards as who receives the grants?
Some information will be public and some is proprietary and will not. So, and we can answer that more thoroughly, but we've already given thought to that, and there's precedent from other grant and finance programs that the state has administered.